It's the PGN Par 4 here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Matt Gajtka, coming to you on location, permanent location, here in the great state of Michigan. Zac Weiss back in Pittsburgh as he has been for his entire life. Zac, like I was just telling you off the air here, it's going to be a little different today. I'm stationed in front of a closet at my in-laws' place. Our new house in Michigan in Grand Rapids is not quite ready, so hey, we're used to doing some videos in some strange locations. We're journalists. We work well when we're not in our home bases. So you'll have to trust that everything's going to go without a hitch tonight.
Absolutely. First of all, congratulations on the move. Second of all, for those of you wondering, we are still planning on keeping Pittsburgh Golf Now intact as everything is. That's the discussion at the moment. And we look forward to continuing to get your input as well with articles and ideas we can pursue. Just because Matt's a little bit more remote doesn't mean things have to stop. So we're looking forward to continuing to pursue those avenues.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And well, this show is one of those avenues we're continuing to pursue. The Par 4 talking mostly Ryder Cup, as you would imagine. We didn't get a chance to speak to you in the immediate run-up to the Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits in Wisconsin. But of course, we had to talk about it tonight just because of, number one, the momentous occasion of not only a United States victory. They've won on home soil before, and now they've won on home soil 3 out of the last 4 times they've played the Ryder Cup here in the States. But 19-9 final score, a 10-point final margin, historic in the modern era since Europe, continental Europe that is, joined the Ryder Cup, joining Great Britain and Ireland on that side of this great biennial rivalry. It's the first time anyone's won by this much. And Zac, admittedly, these are small samples, and it's just a couple matches here or there can swing an entire cup from year in and year out. And occasionally it comes down to the final match. In fact, it has a couple of times over the course of the great history of this event. But I'm wondering, in the aftermath of this great victory for the United States, a lot of writing, a lot of pontificating out there about how this could usher in a new era for United States golf on the international stage, in particular in the Ryder Cup. Heck, Tony Finau even said it before the tournament. He said it was a whole new era, and they hadn't even gone out and done what they ended up doing, which was quite impressive with Finau's help, of course. But like I just said, though, we're talking about a handful of matches, a lot of times in places that these pros are not terribly familiar with. Whistling Straits, definitely an exception to that rule. But for the most part, it's played on courses that guys don't have a lot of experience with. What I'm saying is there's some luck that factors in. I know that the United States is probably going to be the better team for several Ryder Cups in the future, as they have several Ryder Cups going back into the past. But I have a hard time really saying that it's time for a new age in the Ryder Cup. I'm just, for one, as an American golf fan, happy that they got the job done. And also pleased for the guys as part of that team. They were able to show their stuff and really show what the fully operational battle station was all about. So how do you feel about the thought that this could be a harbinger for bigger and better things for Team USA? Are you a part of that group, or are you like me that it's just a win is a win is a win?
Until they win in Europe, it's a win. And I don't look at it as anything beyond that. They were supposed to win. They had 9 of the top 10 golfers in the world on their team. They're supposed to win. The only difference really that's been holding this team back over recent Ryder Cups has been the team play, the teamwork aspect. You dominate one side of the sessions, whether it be foursomes or 4 balls, and then you come back down to earth. I think the belief and the repetition of going to Whistling Straits before the Ryder Cup, decision Steve Stricker made after the FedEx Cup playoffs were over, and everybody with the exception of Brooks Koepka, who of course was still nursing his injury, went down. And that showed that this truly was a united front team. And it really showed because they responded to Stricker. And obviously this is not Stricker's first rodeo with these guys. He's been a vice captain in several of these. He was, of course, the leader of the President's Cup a couple of iterations ago as well. So it's not like he doesn't know these guys. And you could blame Padraig Harrington as much as you want. I just think it came down to the talent. And, I mean, Europe, I think they were a fine team. I think Padraig made a couple of faux pas, a couple of mishaps. But I don't think when you look at the scoreboard and you see 19-9, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. The questions now for Europe are the older guys like Lee Westwood, guys like Sergio Garcia, even a guy that just missed like Justin Rose that was knocking on the door. you're seeing some young and up-and-comers on the European side, like a Robert McIntyre overseas, but the pipeline is not as known as much as it is in the U.S. team. And I mean, granted, Dustin Johnson, who swept the board, which congratulations to him for that accomplishment, it's very possible this could be his final Ryder Cup because just the talent is just knocking each other at the door. It's a really healthy competition. So it's an embarrassment of riches in that sense for the United States side, but it all comes down to the matches. And these courses kind of are tailor-made more for the games, more for the hosts, rather. And you look at this venue, and with the wind, you figure that Europe might have been a factor, but I think it was a combination of just statistically, the Americans were better. Numerically, by ranking, they were better. Mentality-wise, I think the Americans were healthier. They were fresher. They were the more motivated side. And I think the captaincy, I mean, Stricker did a hell of a job rallying the guys. Of course, there was a lot of noise, namely with two players we've talked about on every one of these damn par fours that we won't really name because they hugged it out at the end anyways. So it was good all the way around. The right buttons were pushed, and given the American side, which does have some egos, does have some fieriness, does have a lot of competitiveness, that's not the easiest thing to do with this side. So credit to Steve Stricker. It'll be interesting to see if he wants to go through the stressor and the pressure cooker of this again. I tend to think that he's going to pass the baton and they'll go in a different direction. What that direction is, whether maybe you see a Phil Mickelson going down the line or someone that was a vice captain that has that experience and is ready to take the next step, that remains to be seen. I think you hold off to Mickelson until Bethpage, a couple iterations down the line. I mean, that's naturally match made in heaven. Him and Poulter at Bethpage Black as captaincy, now that would be must-watch television. But I mean, this is an absolute event. By no means is this jump change. Yes, it was kind of boring because it wasn't competitive, but the golf was still quality. And when was the last time you saw the Americans win every single session? Even, especially that last session on Saturday, which was kind of game, set, and match, where things were kind of going a little bit haywire there, but they believed in themselves. And that self-belief and that feeling that what they had was theirs really took them a long way. So credit to this American side. Of course, it comes down to a couple years down the line. Are this team still going to be healthy? How much of this team are we going to see in 2 years? Because, of course, they projected. But you still have to play your way, whether it's automatically or via a pick. So it all remains to be seen.
And of course, so many uncertainties. And as we saw 2 years ago, it seemed like the U.S. was entering a new era after the win at Hazeltine. Pretty commanding win there, too, you might recall, back in 2016. But 2018, the course was tailor-made for a European squad that was built on accuracy more than anything. Whistling Straits just the opposite. And not that the U.S. has a bunch of wild hitters. Quite the contrary. They have great ball strikers. And the U.S. was able to not only flex their muscles, but also show how well they can swing the golf club. And that's what I was most impressed by. A lot of times these Ryder Cups come down to putting, but not this time. The U.S. was consistently closer to the hole. They were consistently in better positions. They just played better overall. And it was fun to watch the whole thing click. And you saw what they're capable of. And I'm glad they pushed for a record there, and they kept the gas pedal down on Sunday singles, winning that segment of the tournament, of the event, 8-4. So they only really had one semi-off session, and that was the afternoon session on Saturday, the 4 balls that the Euros tied 2-2, and even that one they didn't even lose. So it was as comprehensive as it can get, as comprehensive as it has been for either side since the days of the 1970s, when it was a pretty consistent blowout in favor of the U.S. against, as I mentioned, Great Britain and Ireland. So we'll look forward to Rome in 2023. Obviously, the U.S. is going to be favored on the road, perhaps less so than they were here, but who knows? Maybe that carries over, and we see a continued dominance in terms of world golf ranking. When you talk about these two teams, the U.S. average ranking on the squad was like 6 or 7, and the Euros was in the 20s. So not that the WGR is the be-all, end-all, but it tells a pretty salient story. There was no real star on the other side that you feared outside of Jon Rahm. Rory McIlroy isn't at the top of his game anymore. Sergio Garcia is past his prime, but still formidable. So the depth wasn't there, and even the top of the lineup wasn't quite there for the Euros. So a lot of things didn't go right for them. What do you think about winners and losers here, Zach? Not to play too much sports talk radio, but I do find myself compelled by the individual side of things here. For me, a big winner was Bryson DeChambeau. I think he was teetering on the edge of being an anti-hero or even a villain for a lot of people who follow pro golf. But it's funny what putting on that red, white, and blue can do for your likability, number one. But also, he embraced the stage. This seemed to be like him in his absolute element. He's a showman. We all know that, and we know he has no fear when it comes to writing some checks with his mouth or with his or with his actions, and then trying to follow that up with his golf swing. And we'll be talking about him a little bit later in this show. But I think he was one of the big individual winners. You look at Dustin Johnson. He continues to burnish his bona fides as one of the all-time greats and certainly a lock Hall of Famer. Didn't have a great year, though, Zach, leading into this tournament. But at age 37, he still shows he has the ability to dominate an event when he has his best stuff, and he certainly did at Whistling Straits. And it's hard to pick anyone on the European side for a positive. So on the negative side, you got to go with Rory McIlroy, obviously performance-wise, and as far as perhaps, like you mentioned, tactical mistakes, I do wonder why Padraig Harrington was reluctant to go to a guy like Shane Lowry, who's shown so much guts over the years, and is a player that has certainly turned up in the bigger events and played well on Friday too. So I wonder maybe if Harrington stuck to his plan a little bit too much and probably should have loaded up with some of the guys who had more proven track records. What say you on the winners and losers?
Well, directly responding to your comment about Patrick Harrington, it goes back to a lot of sports where, with myself, I'm very active covering college basketball. And it's always interesting seeing the game within the game when one team goes on a run, how that other team responds. Do they stick with the scouting report, or do they stick with what's been displayed on the court? Because clearly in that moment, the scouting report may not work. Do you go law of averages, or do you go with feel? And I think Padraig Harrington had a really, really difficult time with that feel, whether it's, again, due to lack of options, whether it's essentially everybody, with the exception of Team España, kind of free-falling. It makes it really, really tough. Winners, I mean, it goes back to Steve Stricker. It would be really easy in that first session, after that first session, you see a lot of red, white, and blue on that board. It's very easy to stick with those guys for the second round. But he had his plan in place, and he had the guys believing, and he made the changes. I really like that Bryson and Scheffler pairing. I think they really complemented each other well. And having to go against a team like Team España, that's not an easy matchup for either of them. I mean, neither of them's necessarily in the best of form at the moment. They were just kind of riding the high of the Ryder Cup and the emotions that come with it. I would say that DJ won the course, DJ won the press conference, but DJ and Colin Morikawa, I think, are my big winners. Just that pairing really, really gelled well. They had a really good vibe. I also give the NBC a lot of credit where a lot of times the announcers were kind of laying out. And more often than you've ever heard before, you actually got to hear a lot of the player and caddy conversations. And as a golf fan, as golf purists like we are to a certain extent, feeling like that fly on the wall is something that NBC really hasn't done. They've been more personality-driven and less tactical-driven. And sometimes laying out and let the players and caddies communicate, you get to hear things. And maybe if a shot's not going well, you at least hear what their shot shape is, what their mentality is. So I think that was an enormous boost. And credit to Dan Hicks, credit to Paul Azinger, credit to all of their on-course reporters who, that's not an easy course to walk over 3 days and 2 match sessions each day. So credit to them as well. Losers, I think Rory McIlroy was a winner in the sense that he cried and emotionally, and you could see anybody that thinks that this is an exhibition, the tears that were displayed and the humility that was displayed by the European side, especially after the singles matches were coming to a close, was really, really interesting to see because it's not a singles competition. The players, if they lose, first of all, nobody has a high winning percentage. They lose most of the time, and they can kind of have their moment and brush it off. But there's that true disappointment where if they lose, they disappoint the we more than they disappoint the me. And I think that's where it's incredibly difficult. I would say it was fun watching Victor Hovland go out there and compete. You got a guy that kind of, I mean, was he in his best form? No. I would think he's one of the better showing golfers, maybe outside of Team Spain with Garcia and Rahm, but he was a guy that almost everybody on the roster wanted to play with because they know this guy is special. And this is that guy. It's not going to be Rory. I mean, his form is too up and down. It's going to be Jon Rahm and it's going to be Viktor Hovland that's going to be driving these two teams. And at least that's my opinion in the peanut gallery over here. But I think that Hovland showed a lot of moxie. Did he necessarily get the results to back up that moxie? No. But I mean, name a European that did. I'll hang up and listen on that. So really, really, overall, I mean, if you're looking for bright sides, it's that. I don't think calling Padraig Harrington a loser in this situation is fair. Yes, he was out-captained, but he didn't have the roster and the embarrassment of riches. I mean, going back to the captain's picks, Europe had four guys, or three or four guys to pick from in as many spots. And I mean, there's at least a half dozen to 8 to 10 names on the U.S. side that Stricker passed over. Nah, Kisner, those both come to mind. But the fact that every single American got a result, one way, shape, or form, including Daniel Berger at the very end to make it that 10-point margin of victory, that's a huge win to show, like I said in the first response, on the first shot, that this team truly is united. Like we said at the jump, though, this is great. Now the celebration's over. Now you have a huge task. Now you need to get a result across the pond, which now is in Italy. And can you do that? That will be whether this, whatever you define this is, truly works.
And you look even back to last year, or pardon me, 2 years ago, technically, at the President's Cup, the U.S. got a win on foreign soil in Royal Melbourne, and the President's Cup is becoming more competitive by the year as the international talent level builds up outside of Europe. So let's not downplay that as well. You saw, I think it was Justin Thomas mentioned this was a lot like, or no, it was Jordan Spieth who said this year's atmosphere was a lot more like a President's Cup atmosphere. And he meant that as a compliment, even though the President's Cup certainly plays second fiddle to the Ryder Cup. But he was talking about the relaxed nature of the room and just the team atmosphere in general, allowing them to play their best golf. And that speaks well to Steve Stricker. I think it speaks well to some of the players as well who have realized what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And you have that generational turnover, which has been talked about ad nauseum. That's big too. But remember, these guys are talented. And I think just overall, they found a better formula for getting their better play out there in these events where it seemed like year after year, the United States team, especially the last decade, underperformed its true talent level with the exception of Hazeltine in 16. Okay, you brought up Rory, so let's go into our third shot here, Zach, as we approach the green. And I did hesitate calling Rory a loser because I love the candor. I think he's one of the more approachable and relatable superstar athletes that we have, regardless of sport. I'm not just talking about golf. I'm talking about overall. And so I loved hearing from him about how much he appreciates the Ryder Cup. And it tells you just how much these guys treasure playing on a team after being by themselves. Basically, they're not literally by themselves on the tour, but it can be a lonely existence when you're playing for yourself as an independent contractor, even a very wealthy one all the time. So that part of it stood out to me, but also it made me wonder because Rory also said that he found the Ryder Cup to be the purest form of golf or something along those lines. And I do wonder if you feel like, just for you personally, Zach, or do you think the general populace feels that way too? Because there are some exhibition elements to it as well. There's a lot of showmanship in the Ryder Cup. Guys are more emotional. And part of me wishes this were what golf was like more often. But also I wonder, is it even possible? Is the fact that the Ryder Cup only comes around every 2 years, that allows guys to build up the emotion for it. And the PGA Tour regular run-of-the-mill events could never be like this. The majors kind of like this, but not quite to that level just because you don't have that team aspect to it. So while I understand where Rory's coming from, I'm not sure that it is exactly the purest form of golf. I think in a lot of ways it's more of a show than anything else. And it's a very important show for the principles involved, of course. But I don't think it's necessarily representative of what you're going to see, certainly not week in and week out. And I think in a lot of ways, the rarity of the Ryder Cup also makes it special here. So that's where I land on that. I think it's great to say that we should see more showmanship like this. We should see a higher emotional level at regular tournaments. But also part of me says that it's just not feasible. And I'm okay with leaving the Ryder Cup where the Ryder Cup is and allowing it to be that one sparkling special moment we look forward to every 2 years. How do you feel on that topic?
From a geographic certainty, I kind of fall on both sides of the coin because the Ryder Cup, because of where it's placed on the calendar, in a sense, there's an excuse for it to be a second fiddle because it's the appetizer to Sunday night football. And that was the case again this year. And when you have a not compelling Ryder Cup, yes, the broadcasters generally are more friendly with the American side, but there's less to talk about when it's a blowout, and it gets a little bit more flat, and you can cut to as many pairings and groups and results as you want. This is specifically a broad stroke on this edition of the Ryder Cup, mind you, but that part of it, I don't know, because you have the FedEx Cup and all that comes with that. You obviously had the Olympics this year, so you had that aspect of it as well, and some of the guys on both teams got to experience that. Of course, Schauffele winning a medal, McIlroy and Lowry were out there, among others, of course. But mind you, I mean, I don't know what else you can do. I mean, it has to be 2 years, just strictly from the captain's perspectives. The home captain is laying out a course. They're finding ways to put their team in the best situation to get a result. These captains, in some cases, have not met these guys. I mean, who can forget? I know this feels like a pool right now, but Victor Dubuisson, no one knew anything about that guy a few years back, and it was about Paul McGinley playing with him and having that opportunity to say, okay, Graham McDowell, this is your project. You're going to be paired with Dubuisson, and it's up to you to get the best out of him and get a result. But you don't have that luxury if you do this every year. For the Americans, it might be a little bit tougher mentally to get up because you do have the President's Cup in that other year, that even year or that odd year, whatever it falls in with the pandemic anymore. So that part makes it interesting, but I mean, let's not take anything away. Real tears were shed by many men across the roster. You see how tight and honest teams are when they lose and how much it means to them, and you see how jovial the atmosphere and how drunk most of the golfers are on the winning side as well. I mean, they take this stuff seriously, even if they don't make a penny from it, which they may or may not. I have to look that up, but really it doesn't matter because you're playing for pride of country and nation and regardless. So it makes it interesting. I buy into McIlroy's remarks, and the European side, they only get to play every other year, whereas the Americans play President's Cup, Ryder Cup, etc., so on and so forth. So it's an interesting remark, and like you said, Rory McIlroy will talk about any topic is essentially fair game, and to hear him and to be privileged to have talked to him about some touchy-feely subjects, there's no one better to represent the tour or to represent themselves. I mean, Rory McIlroy was defended Bryson DeChambeau when no one on the American side was willing to speak up. It would have been very easy for him to just ignore the question or throw Bryson under the bus, but he said, look, Bryson's just a different cat, and it's working for him. And look, I got caught up too. I saw him chase the distance race, and I saw him getting results. So that made me want to do it, and it got me off my game, and it made me lose my form. And it got into my own head mentally. And it takes an adult, male or female, to admit to that. So I praise McIlroy's candor. I think the Ryder Cup might not necessarily mean as much as it used to, but it is entertaining as hell to watch on television. If you are a golf fan or if you're turning the channel, most people that can't take golf, it's not just one or two guys anymore. It's teams, it's every single pairing you're watching. So there's more variety, and that ability to open it up and the more dialogue, which I mentioned in the second shot, makes it more accessible to the casual fans. So in that aspect, I really enjoy it. And you get instant reaction from the home field advantage fans. And it's unfortunate that due to the pandemic, the European side really didn't have much of a representation there. There were some drunks, but there's some drunks in any gallery. So credit to the Americans for holding their nerve and holding off on the Brooksy comments. And, you know, I mean, it was a pretty good addition. I wish it was more competitive, but I mean, that's just where we're at right now.
Okay, so we can carry some of that emotion over to this week. In fact, one competitor from the Ryder Cup did in a big way so far as of press time, as of recording time of this video on Wednesday night. Bryson DeChambeau has advanced to the round of 32 in the World Long Drive Championship out in Mesquite, Nevada. So, Zach, I wasn't sure what to expect from this. I know there was plenty of controversy coming up to the Ryder Cup. What's Bryson doing? He's trying to prepare for two things at once. He's going to ruin his ability to play at the Ryder Cup. He even fueled some of that speculation and downright skepticism in an interview with Golf Magazine, saying that his hands were, quote, beat up from all of his speed training sessions over the course of the past couple of weeks. But it sure worked at the Ryder Cup. If you didn't catch his 417-yard drive and a couple other big moments for him, including an eagle on number one, the par four at Whistling Straits in his singles match against Sergio Garcia. So the long drive training, as he's proven over the course of the past 18 months now, the chasing speed, as some have called it, hasn't affected his game in a bad way at all. In fact, it's given him a bigger boost, just as he had hoped. And now, Zach, he's out there with guys with swings that, let's just say, wouldn't quite cut it on the PGA Tour, wouldn't quite cut it on the Corn Ferry Tour or a mini tour in a lot of cases. They're selling out for power, but he's doing it. I watched some of this. I streamed some of this on YouTube tonight. I had to check it out. My curiosity got the better of me after I heard he advanced after the first round or through the first round. To watch him do this with, I hate to call them circus acts, but some of the guys in the World Long Drive Championship are just trying to get one drive in play out of their 6. Bryson's putting almost all of them in play, first and foremost. And he's hitting actual golf shots here, like we've seen on the PGA Tour, and he's competing with some of the hardest swingers in the world. So, number one, I'm impressed. But number two, it leads me to think of a different question here. I've been watching some of the YouTube videos of the World Long Drive record holder, Kyle Berkshire, a guy in his mid-20s, long hair, definitely has a bit of a personality as well, much like Bryson. They've become buddies, and I'm wondering, I know Kyle's trying to make a run for the PGA Tour. So what's our next crossover between the PGA Tour and World Long Drive competitors? Is it a World Long Drive athlete making the PGA Tour, or at least making a run at it, a decent run at it, and playing a few tournaments? Or is it another guy like Bryson going the other way and trying to feed his competitive fire in that sense? I think we'll see Kyle Berkshire make it, at least in some form or fashion, on the PGA Tour. I like what I see from his regular swing, if you will, in addition to what he puts out there in these World Long Drive competitions. How do you feel on that? What's the next crossover, if there is going to be one?
I think if it's Berkshire, it would have to be a sponsor exemption. Which, I mean, let's not forget, John Smoltz on the PGA Tour Champions regularly gets one. Jerry Rice has gotten one. Michelle Weonica, Sorenstam, by far not novelty acts, but they have gotten sponsor exemptions to play on the PGA Tour. And the list goes on and on and on. There are special appearances. Stephen Curry also rolls off the mind right at this moment. So it's not outside the realm of possibility for DeChambeau to maybe say, you know what, let's get some excitement going. And really, that's what this whole thing is about. Are some of these swings novelty swings? You're darn right, a lot of these are novelty swings, and it's not even close, but that's what makes it fun. I mean, I throw my back out just watching how far they're able to torque and contort their bodies just to get a result that might just get into the grid. And to see them get extremely excited after getting the ball 430 yards rolling down the fairway. It's really entertaining to watch, and I've watched it for several years when I've had the opportunity because it is fun to watch. A lot of these guys, like you said with Kyle, have regular swings, and a lot of these guys are probably hovering around the even, 1 over, 2 over on their average rounds, which, depending on the course, might play, might not, but again, it's also what courses are they playing to get those scores when the PGA Tour is tricking up the roughs, tricking up the greens, and of course now with what Bryson's been able to do, it's a double-edged sword because now everything with the golf ball is becoming a complexity. So I think Kyle has a shot. Realistically, I think you're going to see what Bryson's doing now, which regardless of result, Bryson DeChambeau is a winner this week. He's grown the game. He's speaking to the media again. He feels comfortable in his own skin again. And I think that's really the most important thing from a mental aspect. Mentally, Bryson is 100% all in on this. This is not a novelty act when easily it could be viewed as such. So credit to him. I think you could see a crossover both ways. I just think you're more inclined to see it on the PGA Tour. And damn, I wish Phil Mickelson was 10 years younger because he'd been the first guy I would have thought of.
There's a player, a South African youngster, 21 years old, Wilco Nienaber, who is making some noise. He might be your guy, Zach, to make that move and try to cross over things. And like I said, feed his competitive fire. I know Bryson's doing this to help motivate himself to continue to get faster and faster and stronger and stronger and hit the ball farther and farther. So as long as it doesn't interfere that much, I don't see a problem with it. As a Brandel Chambly on the Golf Channel, like him or dislike him, love him or hate him, I should say, he's pretty polarizing. But as he said, the competitors in long drive show you how to hit the ball because they have to maximize absolutely everything in the motion. Every ounce of power in their body has to go in that ball. So even though I may snicker at some of the motions there, the fundamentals, especially the fundamentals of power, are there. And so I think there's plenty of opportunity here for more crossover. That's what I would like to see. because it's electrifying. And I may like the long drives and maybe more, I guess, impressed by that than some golf fans out there. But I bet a lot of folks who don't watch a lot of golf were really turned into to Bryson DeChambeau fans, number one, from watching him at the Ryder Cup, but also maybe intrigued by this other side car to golf, if you will, to pro golf, which in a lot of ways has fallen on hard times. NBC was previously showing a lot of these competitions. Now you have to find them on YouTube, and it's a very rudimentary setup. And take it from someone like me who's done a lot of rudimentary broadcasts from places. This one's right up there with anything that I've done. So I hope that Bryson's presence inspires maybe more sponsors and gets more money into the thing and helps these competitors make more of a decent living from it, at least the ones at the top. But also, I hope we do see more of that meshing, because for me, that's where golf is going to go. I think you're going to see, we have seen greater athleticism over the years, just ticking up and up and up. And this is the logical conclusion, right? And I think it's fun to watch, to watch players push the barriers and see where they can go. And as we all know, Bryson's been a big proponent of that. He's been chasing this now for almost 2 full calendar years, and it's provided a lot of interesting situations and plenty of fun things to watch, at least from my perspective. Well, Zac, thanks a lot again. This, I guess, would conclude the pro golf season, as they've already started the new season on the PGA Tour here. They started a couple of weeks ago in Napa Valley. So that can put a capper on the year in that way, but still plenty of golf topics to come. We'll be discussing them right here on the PGN Par 4, as Zac alluded to at the top of the show. Even though I'm no longer in Pittsburgh, I'm planning to continue to keep the site going. And with the help of folks like Zac, of course, he's been a huge contributor to this website. So Zac, thank you in a public forum. I've thanked you many times in a private forum, but thank you again for all you've done for the website here as we move into a new era, like the U.S. Ryder Cup team, hopefully a very exciting new era and a successful new era.
And also, I want to take a quick second. Just the feedback from the 9 holes with Andy Toole has been overwhelmingly positive. And it was, on my end, it was kind of a shot in the dark. So to have that shot in the dark be rewarded the way it was, and your kind words truly mean a lot. Of course, a huge thanks to Matt for believing in the project. Of course, to Josh Donino over at Moon Golf Club, Mike Darnay for providing the visuals and the edits, and of course, from a Robert Morris perspective, Andy Toole, the men's basketball coach, and Jim Duzick. I'm hoping, I'm coming down inside the actor's studio. I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold at the moment, and I look like Casper the Ghost, but that's okay. But I do feel free to tweet PGH Golf Now or myself with any future guests that, if the weather is good enough, I mean, we're still in October, we're about to turn into October. I'm sure I'd be more than willing to go out there and hit some more terrible shots for you guys. And moving into 2022, I would love to hear your thoughts on what I could do better and potential other guests. I know I've got some other guests lined up mentally that I'm working on at the moment, but if you have a name that you think would be interested, by all means, I'm all ears. It's a group effort, so I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. But again, the praise and the kind words across the board are appreciated by all of us in this project.
Hey, Andy was game, man. He loved it seemed like, and it really came across on camera. So that was a really cool addition to what we've offered here at Pittsburgh Golf Now. That's it for our half hour of power, close enough to it at least, as I check the clock. For Zac Weiss, I'm Matt Gajtka. Keep it right here on PittsburghGolfNow.com. And Zac also mentioned our Twitter account, PGH Golf Now. We're on Facebook too. We're on Instagram. We'll keep that rolling as well. So plenty of ways to reach us, offer suggestions, and really keep the ball rolling here as we move into what I often say is the best time of the year to get out and play golf if you can avoid some of those fallen leaves, that is. We'll talk to you next time on the PGN Par 4. See you later.